Welcome to episode 184 of Trek Live. In this week's episode, we're going to be talking about space stations, anything stationary in the Star Trek universe. We're going to be trying to guess each other's. But before we get into that, how you doing this morning, Bill?
Well, happy to be back. We took last weekend off for Labor Day here in the States. We both had some stuff going on over that holiday weekend. And just thrilled to be back talking Star Trek. Back into the routine.
Yeah, it's nice to be back. It always feels like a super long time when we've been gone for only maybe a week or so. So I'm excited to talk some Star Trek this morning. But before we get into that, Bill, how's your rewatch going?
It's going great. I went really prior to yesterday. 2 weekends before that, I was pretty slow. I hadn't done a whole lot. But yesterday, I had a Star Trek-filled day. I watched, I think, 9 or 10 episodes yesterday. I think I'm up to 12 for the weekend. I watched a couple Friday night. Yeah, it was one of those days. I didn't have anything really going on. Played it safe, stayed home, didn't do anything crazy, and watched a lot of Star Trek. I watched from Voyager, everything from Waking Moments through the Killing Game. So that little Hirogen arc.
Yeah.
It was
Nice.
the beef of that. And from Deep Space Nine, I watched everything from where did it start? It ended at Change of Heart, and it started with Who Mourns for Morn. So that included things like Far Beyond the Stars, One Little Ship, Honor Among Thieves.
Some great ones.
Yeah. The standouts are definite. I mean, Far Beyond the Stars is
easy. Yeah.
Way up there at the top of my favorite episodes of Star Trek ever. I really love Prey from Voyager, the Hirogen episode where they're hunting species 8472. Tony Todd plays the Hirogen hunter. Seven and Janeway are completely at odds over how to handle the situation and whether or not to listen to the Hirogen's ideas about just kind of handing over 8472 and getting the heck out of there. And Janeway wants to protect 8472 and try to take the diplomatic road, the high road, and they can just not reconcile their differences. And I like that episode a lot. Message in a Bottle is a great comedy.
Yeah,
a good variety of episodes. Like I had comedies with Message in a Bottle and Who Mourns for Morn. I had even One Little Ship's got some comedy to it. And then the deep, dark, stuff like Honor Among Thieves and Prey and, big social commentary and classic Star Trek stuff like Far Beyond the Stars. So it was good. It was a good little run. And I'm glad to be back on the train after a couple weeks of not watching a whole lot of, taking a little break from the rewatch.
Yeah.
What about you?
Oh,
go ahead.
One real quick thing about Prey. I always, in that whole Hirogen arc, I always forget how dangerous they are. I think they get overshadowed by the Borg a little bit in Voyager, but it's one of those things where it's you forget how dangerous and how menacing and how just easily they can just So yeah, that's just one thing I always notice about Prey and that whole Hirogen arc. Yeah.
Definitely in Hunters, the episode before Prey, the first time that we really kind of come up close and personal with the Hirogen, they cast really big actors, like overpowering physical presences as the Hirogen.
Physically big.
Physically big. There's a scene where one of them grabs Seven of Nine by like her throat, and it really looks like they could just snap her in half.
Yeah.
And Tuvok and Seven definitely feel threatened and in real jeopardy when they're held by them. And playing into things like they completely gutted this alien species that Voyager finds a ship and they beam the remains of what's left over to sickbay, and it's like completely gutted, no bones, no guts, no nothing. So it's just the visual of that and seeing what these guys do to the people they're hunting down really does add, like you said, a real threatening overtone to everything having to do with the Hirogen. And I do think they get overshadowed a little bit by the stuff that lasts longer, the aliens who are threatening for longer over the course of that show.
Yeah, for me, I've been pretty bad. I've been super busy, personal stuff and with work and things, so I've only been able to watch one
Yeah,
episode. Um, and it was an interesting one. I watched Covenant
Covenant.
a few nights ago, and yeah, an interesting kind of a exploration on kind of another side of the Bajoran culture that's a little bit weird, and it dives into
Yeah,
some
get into
interesting
some
cultiness types
cult.
of things.
Yeah,
Um, and yeah, it just I don't know, it just felt weird to me.
pretty dark.
Pretty dark, pretty grim. What happens at the end of that episode is mind-boggling a little bit, and kind
Pretty
of
rough stuff.
yeah, it's just interesting.
The
So
controversy there, I think, for a lot of people is in season 7, especially the continued exploration of Dukat and the sort of turn that character has made post Waltz. You know, after he's escaped Federation custody and kind of goes off and
yeah,
becomes this roguish guy who finds himself in
yeah,
league with
I
the Pa Wraith worship being
yeah,
Bajorans is a
yeah,
pretty wacky and divisive direction. I think there is some well mined territory there to talk about. You know, whether that was the right thing or not, whether that's satisfying or not. The Covenant's like ground zero, I think, for that sort of pivot point
yeah.
for people.
I think he definitely goes off the deep end a little bit, and I think
Yeah.
I don't mind it. I think that a character that goes through a whole heck of a lot, I think should have some post-traumatic stress disorder, be able to just snap, but also at the same time, it kind of feels true to the character because he's always been searching for that approval from the Bajoran people, and then
For sure.
also just a power-hungry person. So he likes to be worshipped and likes to be liked. So I think for me it works. At least the start of this little arc at the end of the series, but yeah, I guess we'll talk about it at the end when I how it ends. So
For sure.
Yeah.
Yep. I think you got some good stuff coming up with it's only a paper moon. That's your next one, and that's a pretty well beloved episode. So looking forward to hearing what you have what you have to say about that one. Hopefully next week.
Get
Back
into
here.
some more episodes for sure.
Yep.
Yeah. I think we should jump into the topic at hand.
Yep.
Bill, talk about just real quick, if you're just tuning in for the first time, if you're like, what's Guess Each Other's? Bill, how do we kind of handle this type of topic?
So yeah, we have a pretty long backlog of topics like this. It's kind of our way of looking at, to throw some love to one of our favorite podcasts, both of us, Trek Ranks. You know, they do top 5 lists. They pick their favorites. I've been lucky enough to guest on that show quite a few times. This is a sort of way to differentiate that idea. You know, top 5 lists are well-mined territory. We've done that a lot over the years, and a lot of people have. This is sort of a different approach to that. We try to see how well we know each other and each other's preferences and tastes in the Star Trek universe. We try to guess each other's favorites before we reveal our own, and through that kind of gives us opportunities to touch on maybe more things. Dan might guess something that's not quite on my list and not even on his list, and that kind of gives us a way to even expand what we're talking about beyond maybe especially in a topic like this where we might have some overlap. It creates some spillover into some honorable mention kind of choices that expands the discussion a little bit and kind of challenges us to, like I said, see how well we know each other's tastes and learn a little bit about what we don't know through that process. So yeah, check out our playlist. There's a playlist in the Trek Live channel. If you go to that, there's I think like 11 or 12 at this point. Maybe that's an exaggeration. Maybe there's 8 or 9. I don't know. There's a bunch.
There's a bunch. Yeah.
Everything ranging from captains to non-captain characters to bridges,
engineers,
props, and engineers, sets like bridges and non-bridge sets, all kinds of stuff. And if that's your thing, if you like to explore the Star Trek universe through like favorite lists and what's the best of, I would encourage everybody to check out that list of videos. And today's topic, what we're doing today, is as you can see on our thumbnail and on the video's title, is space stations That is a broad term. I think
Yeah.
it could be seen as a broad term. You can look at this in a number of different ways. Space docks, some of them are pseudo space stations themselves. Some of them are more, maybe not as easily defined as something that could be a space station sort of thing. Like this is vague, and we could have some interesting differences of opinion or things that get named that might not be named by somebody else because they might not define an object as the same thing. It's going to be interesting. We kind of intentionally sometimes leave these things vague because I think that can create as many interesting pathways for these kinds of conversations as anything. And here on Trek Live, we don't like to be super clean and scripted.
No.
And we embrace the liveness and the sort of all over the placeness of an actual in-person conversation as much as we can mimic that over a computer screen and through video. So we're gonna have at it and see where it goes.
Let's do it. Bill, how do you want to do this? You want me to go first? You want to go first?
So what we usually do is we do the guesses first, just to kind of get them up on the board. And then we'll do our actual lists. And once we have everything up there, we'll really dive into each thing and talk about each thing that's on the screen. If you're watching us, you'll be able to kind of follow along and see what we're doing. Yeah, why don't you put your guesses for me up first, and then I'll do my guesses for you. Talk about them for a second, and then we'll get into the actual list and go from there. While you're getting that ready, I'll just say this is definitely the toughest, I think, one that I've done in a little bit, and I think a lot of it might have to do with like what to define as a space station. There are some things that are a little bit more potentially broadly defined that I questioned whether or not they would make sense on this list. So it's going to be interesting. Some of the ones that you would find on that playlist, I think, were more straightforward and maybe a little easier in terms of the guessing part of this whole thing.
Yeah. That's for my my number 5 guess for Bill. I'm gonna guess the station from Dead Stop. And spoiler alert, I went more of the traditional space station route, more as opposed to like a space dock or something else. So all of these are primarily space stations. But I think, at least for me, I tried to go maybe a little bit traditional with a few wrinkles, i.e. this pick here is Dead Stop. Let's see here.
Pear Station and Dead Stop. That's You definitely know my taste in Enterprise pretty well. I mean, it's a high favorite in from that show. Yeah. We have Jimmy77 and Cyber Honey in the chat. Good morning to you both. Cyber Honey, I believe you're a Miami Dolphins fan, and it is kickoff Sunday, and so good luck to your Dolphins. And if either of you have favorite space stations, space-faring stationary objects, I'd love to hear them. We'll definitely incorporate them in our discussions for you folks or anybody else who's kind of hovering in chat or popping in here. ESD, I'm guessing that's Earth Space Dock.
Yeah, it's the it's not. There's probably other ones out there, but it's the mushroom looking one with the very like carrot looking lower half, and then like the kind of dome
Yep.
at the top. Yeah.
Yep. First seen in Search for Spock, and seen many other times over the course of the movies and Next Generation, especially. I think we see it a good bit. Not so much later than that, but definitely on screen a good bit over the course of.
Speaking of, this is a similar one. Starburst 375, I think, is also used in Regular 1 for, but it has a longer base in Star Trek 2, I think. It's used a lot. It's kind of got a bigger upper half with kind of like a shuttle bay, and then lower, and then three or four different modules kind of at the bottom as well for that. That's my number 3 guess.
Okay. Jimmy77 is, not to throw a wrench in you, is saying that he's having trouble hearing you. You want to check your...
Sure.
Just to be safe.
That's way too high. I also had my mic turned high.
Okay. So Starbase 375 is sort of a originally, I think, from Star Trek II: The Wrath of Khan, the regular one, space station. Definitely, actually, I take that back. It's not originally designed for that. It was originally designed for the motion picture.
That's right.
And was you see it? It's actually turned upside down from what we usually see it as. It was turned upside down for Star Trek II, and then reused many times throughout. The Next Generation and Deep Space Nine as a kind of standing
Federation
space station. Yep. So definitely a commonly used model.
And to top it all off with the number 1 guess, my guess for Bill, his favorite station would be Deep Space Nine. So I'll run through the picks really quick. So my guesses for Bill: the 5th pick would be Dead Stop, space station that can fix anything with a price. So my next pick is the kind of mushroom style Earth Space Dock. It's seen a lot in TNG and other things. Starbase 375. It's the style of space station that I think is the staple for any Federation kind of outpost or anything like that. It's used in the movies as well, as Bill said. K7, which is, I think, originally from TOS. It's similar to some of these space stations. It's got the cone type, but it's got the modules outward and then a bigger center kind of module, which I really like. And then, obviously, I don't really have to... There's much introduction for my first pick. It's Deep Space Nine. So, yeah.
Very, very cool. Okay. Definitely some correct answers there that we'll get into here in a couple of minutes. I'm going to give you my guesses for you. We'll do them next, and then we'll crack into our actuals. My guess for your number 5 is going to be Federation headquarters from the 32nd century. I don't know how you want to put that up there from Discovery this past season. Kind of a blind. I have very little confidence in my guesses for you, and that is definitely a Hail Mary pass. For that. So Federation HQ, Disco Federation HQ, would be my number 5 for you.
Yeah, text is a little bit different in the studio. Keep going.
My number 4 for you is going to be the Regula 1 sort of Starbase 375,
Yeah.
same kind of deal. For number 4, which again you could label any number of ways. I think I want to say that they change it a little bit. I think what you referenced, Starbase 375, which is what you'd see in like Deep Space Nine, 6th season, during that Dominion War arc. That is a little refined from that regular one, Star Trek II look, maybe a little more compact. I want to say I could be wrong, but I do think they adjusted it.
The regular one is longer. It has like a longer. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Correct. So we'll go with that 375. 3 Earth space dock for the next one, which is kind of that's sort of a gray area a little bit. Like it's in Star Trek 3, it's space dock. Like that's how they refer to it. You tend to go there to have maintenance done on the ship, and it seems to be a place where construction's done.
Yeah.
Correct. But in other points in the Next Generation, they do sort of refer to it as more of like a space station, or like a star base. That would tend to be more like a lived-in, more fully functional, operational place as opposed to just like a construction site. 2, I have the Yorktown from Star Trek Beyond.
Okay.
Which is another one that kind of, how to exactly define it is kind of an open question. Is it space station? Is it a star base? Is it I guess they call it a star base in the movie, I want to say. But it's like a stationary place where people live and do business, and so I threw it on here as a possible. And then my number 1 is Deep Space Nine, which seems like the most obvious part of this list, I would imagine, for probably everybody involved. So I would be shocked if Deep Space Nine wasn't most people's number 1. We do have some feedback in the chat that I think, while you're kind of finishing that off and getting set for the actuals. Jimmy77 loves Jupiter Station and the Yorktown space station, so some overlap there with Yorktown.
Yeah.
And then he says, remember, maybe it was called Earth Space Dock in the 23rd century, but by the 24th century, they were more common. And that's kind of, I totally agree, Jimmy77. I think initially it was designed as, Earth Space Dock, but I do think by the 24th century, that design seems to be more of a
more time
commonly used starbase. Yeah, exactly. So, do you want to do your list, and then I'll give you mine? Kind of dive into everything, or
let's do it. It might take me a little bit to get through some of these. So, my picks, my actuals. So my 5th pick is actually the just perfect kind of transition. Is there a space dock?
Okay.
1. Hopefully all of these are on here so I can just copy and paste. Next is the Starbase 375.
Okay. Rob is in the chat. How you doing, Rob?
Welcome, Rob. Next is K7.
K7, nice. I knew I should have had that on there because you're so you like the retro.
I like the retro
designs,
and not just in space stations, but really anything.
And
absolutely. Then Bill did complete my 1 and 2. It is in fact the Yorktown. Okay. I really enjoyed the Yorktown because it's so different and such a departure, and it's one of those moments. And one of those aspects in Star Trek where I was generally in awe. There's other things in Discovery that I've kind of had reactions to that, but I was just like, it's so cool, so different, and it just kind of brought me back to, younger me discovering Star Trek for the first time. Just in awe at the things that they create, the production elements, just everything. So yeah, those are my top 5. Those are my actuals. I went traditional, more space stations. I know we could go really cute with some Voyager and TNG picks for some of these stations, but I went really traditional. I wanted to maybe do something cute and do like Terok Nor or Impact Nor as a space station. Technically, it would be the same. It would be the same thing as Deep Space Nine, but it would just be either in a different time, a different name, or the sister station to Deep Space Nine. So I wanted to maybe tweak that in there, but I just went traditional. And for me, Deep Space Nine is again one of those things where I'm just like, it feels very lived in and very interesting, and then the design itself is such a departure. It just feels fresh. It doesn't feel like a recycled 375. It just feels so different and so just very interesting. And I don't know what else I can say about Deep Space Nine. I really do like that space station, but that's not to knock any of these other ones. Again, I really do like K7 as well. It's very retro, and it feels very logical in that it feels kind of Federation, kind of what we see before, because like the outstretched arms with the modules and things like that we see in like 375 and some of these other star bases. So yeah, you can see the lineage there for sure. So yeah, those are my picks. Bill, let's jump into see how right I was, because you got 4 out of 5 of mine, so hopefully I can at least get close with some of these.
You did. My number 5 is the Dead Stop repair station.
Okay, cool.
So you nailed that. Yep. I toyed with. I've since yesterday like flipped my sort of honorable mention to number 5 a couple of times. But I love Dead Stop so much as an episode, and that glossy white
interior
set design on the interior, and the sort of ominous appearance of like the expanding.
Yeah, that's super cool.
The way it adjusts is really cool. Yep. The computer voice from Roxanne Dawson is pretty memorable, pretty great. So I had to put that on there, and I wanted to stretch a little bit outside of some of the more Federation-esque kinds of designs / hero, obviously Deep Space Nine, which isn't really Federation, but you know, this looms really large. My number 4 is K7. You kind of said it. I love the clear sort of similarities, even to the original Enterprise design with the long arms.
Yeah.
And there's some very obvious lineage in that Federation design if you just look at the Constitution class classic and K7 side by side. They look like they came from the same headspace. And it's got a really classy throwback retro bar in it that looks fun to hang out in, and it's got some cool interior stuff for TOS. It's in a classic episode, so what's not to like? So K7 for sure. The Earth Space Dock is my number 3. Again, what kind of already hasn't been said. That's something that I'm sure I wasn't around in 1984 when the Search for Spock came out. I didn't get to see it firsthand, but I feel like that would have had some punch as like a, whoa, that's really big, that's really cool, that's really fresh, new thing being introduced.
Is there an Eagle Moss of it? Of the Earth
I think there is coming.
Ugh.
I think I don't know if it's out yet, but I think I saw within the last few months an announcement that it was finally coming. Maybe it is out. But yeah, that's a clear favorite that was used many times for good reason. I'm going with Yorktown for my number 2.
Nice.
I completely agree with everything you said. One of the things that Star Trek might be a struggle for Star Trek for somebody like me, especially, who's watched it my whole life and has these images in my head for what it is and what it's not, and how it works, to really kind of shock you and shock me and give me that sense of awe and like make me feel young again. That's hard to it's hard to do in the Star Trek universe because it's so developed and so lived in.
Yeah.
And Yorktown did that. It felt big and revolutionary and different and exciting. And it's not even just like the beauty of it. It's the idea behind it. That it's this hub where different Federation
it's like a planet.
cultures come, and share ideas, and it's like a hub for the sharing of information, and it's really cool. I wish we got to see more of it, because it's in the Kelvin timeline and kind of tucked away in that movie. It's sort of a standalone thing, but it really does throw a pretty heavy punch and make it leaves a lasting impression. And then Deep Space Nine's obviously number one. Rob mentions the Cardassian design and aesthetic. One of the beauties of that show is how together the lineage of, or the design that you're holding up kind of even weaves its way into the set design on Deep Space Nine, in those sets, with the circular, spherical, passageways.
Yeah.
Like it's just that design is everywhere on that show, and it's so like instantly Deep Space Nine. The second you see it, I think they just did an amazing job of, giving that, because it's not Federation, it had to be new and different and equally sort of welcoming, but also at the same time ominous because it's not ours. It's weird and different, but it has to eventually feel like home, which it does. I think they found that perfect balance of making it alien and maybe even a little scary at the beginning, but allowed it to evolve into a place you want to live.
Yeah,
pretty quickly, and certainly by the end of the show.
It does feel really cohesive. Like the outside exterior does feel like the inside, because I think some of these space stations, I feel like you could make a case that they're just like recycling some like Enterprise bridges or corridors and things like that in places.
Sure.
So, but no, Deep Space Nine, it has its own arc in itself. I think when we first get there, it feels really dangerous and dirty, but now it's flourishing, and the station feels broken at the beginning and old and scary, but now it just by the end of the show it feels just full of life and a big like the habitat ring just feels busy, and before it was phaser fire was opening up on the promenade and things, but now it's just like shops, and at least right now, but yeah, I don't know what else I can say about Deep Space Nine.
Yeah. No, I mean, there's not much. I mean, everything's certainly been touched on over the years.
Yeah.
Since 1993, made its debut. No surprise that it was number one across the board.
Yeah.
Well deserved and kind of, I think, unarguable for us at least. Rob threw out a couple, the Borg Unimatrix Zero, or the Unimatrix Complex that we see late in the game, and Voyager. That's a cool one. Then Voyager's got a couple of them that you mentioned, the Caretaker's Array as well. I think that's another one that popped into my mind as I was kind of like thinking about deep cuts. There's one that I kept coming back to that I almost threw on the list as sort of a cute, like, haha, look at my deep cut kind of a pick.
Yeah.
Was in the Voyager Conspiracy, the one with the that experimental propulsion technology that they're kind of toying with.
I was thinking about doing that too. Yeah.
Yeah. Which ends up being like, for those who have seen Discovery third season in Unimatrix, or in Unification 3, the propulsion technology that the Vulcans were experimenting with seems like that sort of
was similar
idea.
Yeah.
It's like you fly through a gateway and it throws you to some far off place. SB-19, the Vulcans called it, but seemed to be inspired maybe by that technology that was being toyed with in the Delta Quadrant, and that's a memorable design that for a little standalone episode late in Voyager to pop into my head pretty quick. I almost picked it for that reason, but did not mention Jupiter Station. That's another one, Jimmy, that was around in my head as a very real possibility, something I could have picked and would have felt pretty good about. There's definitely some cool stuff going on there as well. Um,
Yeah.
Voyager's got a lot of them, actually. I think Voyager has, and you can get really deep into the. Again, if you depending on how you define this stuff, that I just watched Message in a Bottle, that communications array that the Hirogen have. It's not really a space station, but it's a stationary object.
Yeah,
so
technically it would work.
Yeah. Yep. For sure.
Yeah.
Was there any?
For me,
ahead,
I thought about just doing like a dry dock or something that we see kind of tons of times in the Star Trek universe. But I just think that as much as I like it, it just wasn't interesting enough. I think these other stations just have more to offer than just some cool skeleton structure around a ship. So I decided to go with that just because, I mean, technically it does have life because we got some worker bees and some other interesting armatures and things. Yeah. But for me, just I think if I'm being honest, I just like these kind of stations more than just some of that stuff. As interesting, as cool as it looks with a space or a starship in there getting worked on, I just couldn't do it. So that's why I didn't put like any of the dry docks or anything in my lists.
Me too. I found myself thinking about the dry dock in the motion picture, but when I think about that scene, I'm thinking about the Enterprise. I'm not thinking about the structure of
look at that armature.
The dry dock. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it makes the Enterprise look cooler, but it's all about enhancing the ship.
Yeah.
As opposed to like, oh, look at I've never looked at the dry dock sequence and gone, oh man, look at the dry dock. But, it's there, and I've seen it a million times.
But it's the Enterprise.
But it's the showstopper in that sequence is certainly the Enterprise.
Yeah.
And even the one, like, I do kind of like, you see it in TNG, the sort of Enterprise D dry dock sequences in Family and even in All Good Things when Picard's doing like the shuttle inspection with Tasha. There's some cool ideas there with like the dry dock sort of like grasping the saucer section, which opens the door for potentially it being like modifiable to fit different ships to sort of like grasp a hold of the ship. I like that idea, but again, same thing. I mean, it's a cool way to look at the Enterprise as opposed to like the dry dock itself. So
I do like the dry dock, and maybe it's just because it's on the ground, but the dry dock in the Kelvin timeline is kind of cool too. When we first see it being built. I also like the space station in the Kelvin timeline. I think it's maybe 09. It's kind of like the saucer sections are kind of connected to these discs in kind of the middle. I like that station as well too. But
I thought about that too.
Yeah, I think these ones for me can, like we talked about this with dry docks. I think these stations can stand alone, just be something. But with I think some of the other like locations and elements and stations and things, they have to have something else with them, like having the ships behind them too. I mean, we do get a shot of Starbase 375 with like the 7th Fleet kind of behind there and a bunch of other stuff. But I think the main focal point is the station itself. So I think that's a mark of something that I look for. I don't know.
Agreed. For me, I think maybe to throw out there, maybe you can answer the same question. My toughest cut, my true honorable mention, is Starbase 25, which was seen in an Embarrassment of Dupplers, the most recent Lower Decks episode.
Oh, dang it! I forgot about that. And you sent me that tweet.
I did. I did. That's been on my mind, but it's recency, and that's the one that I was toying with the Dead Stop station. And I was like, do I go with the recency of this new thing that I really thought was cool? And I'll talk a little bit in a second about why I love it so much. But Dead Stop has the benefit of it's been around, like it's been in my head for almost 20 years now. It's insane.
Crazy to say.
Sad on one hand, but it's got the benefit of like leaving a lasting impression, which I don't know as much if Starbase 25 will do that. But I love what Lower Decks and even the old animated series, as kind of not in love with that show as I have ever been. the one obvious benefit that animation brings is that it's not limited by the limitations of production. You can
Do
show
whatever
these
you want. Yeah.
big places. When you play Star Trek Online, for example, and you go into like Earth Space Dock, it's this massive, huge environment where you can. It's stuff that your imagination can come up with, but these shows, whether you're talking The Next Generation or Discovery or Picard, are just not going to be able to probably convey that sense of size and that scale. But Lower Decks can, because it's whatever can be drawn, and the environment in that space station that they showed this past week, again, sort of like the Yorktown, it just seemed like there were so many different people living there and doing business there, and it's like this culmination of all these cultures and aspects of life in the galaxy in the 24th century all in one place. I really loved that aspect of that episode, and I like the design of the of the exterior as well. It's kind of similar to the 09 space deck. Yeah, it's got like those sort of like, I guess it's a little different there with the docks, but it's really cool. It's like a natural progression from Earth space dock. It's got some elements of that mushroom kind of look, but it's more compact, and it has the exterior docks. Really.
Yeah. Sorry guys, bear with me. I was trying to get it up on screen as fast as possible. Hopefully you guys can see that without exposing all the behind the scenes stuff that Bill and I have to deal with.
Yep, it's there.
But yeah,
it looks good.
This is freaking awesome. I think it feels, I don't know if you talked about this, Bill. I was in the zone, but it feels an extension of Earth Space Dock. I think you can see some.
Exactly. Yep.
You can see some lineage there, as Bill talked about.
For sure.
But it's a little bit more unique with the ring style, which is kind of similar to we see in Deep Space Nine, where there's a gap, there's some space in between. So I think that's really cool. I love to see that. And then, I don't. It's cool. Definitely toughest cut for me. I think you're right, Bill. That's definitely a tough cut.
Yeah, I think the only reason Dead Stop won out was the longevity of that episode kind of holding up as a favorite, and the episode standing on that design and that set, and that all the space station stuff kind of powers that episode a lot too, strong as it is. So I felt like I had to have that on there, but it was painful to cut that because it's so new and so exciting, and I loved it so much. So yeah.
I think that about does it.
Yeah.
I think. Yeah.
We talked about a lot of, because of you guys in the chat, Rob and Jimmy77, Cyber Honey, you guys all threw out there some really cool stuff. She mentioned Cyber Honey, Beirat's space station. I'm actually going to have to look that up. And I'm ashamed to say the name is familiar, but I don't know it off the top of my head. Oh, okay. It's in the Necrid Expanse.
Oh,
Voyager.
yeah.
It's the fair trade spot. Yep.
Okay.
Very cool. I mean, that is a scary place. That is not a place I'd want to hang out. That's for sure.
No.
But it's a cool design, and it's definitely a heavy player in that episode, and it's a big point of that show. Really, it's like they're sort of crossing into true unknown territory, where the one guy who knows anything no longer knows anything on the ship, and that's a really good deep cut. I love that got mentioned too. But because of you guys, I feel like we touched on a lot of stuff that we didn't choose, but really worthy, great designs that left lasting impressions on you guys and on us. It was a fun conversation.
Yeah, we'll be back next week for more Star Trek discussion. Stay tuned for also some more discussions on core setting with the newest episodes of Speaking of Lower Decks in the coming weeks. I guess this has been Guess Each Other's. I'm not sure what iteration this is, but it's episode 184 of Trek Live. Thank you guys, everybody in chat. You guys make the show. We love hearing from you guys and being a part of the discussion with us. I think that's my favorite thing. I do like just thinking about answers for the topics and things, but I also love to hear from you guys. So thank you guys for tuning in every week. You guys are awesome. Thanks everybody for watching after the fact, and we'll see you guys next week.
See everybody. Thank you.